I am Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Glenn?
Yes.
What was the top story?
I would say the top story was John Paul Stevens saying, get rid of the Second Amendment.
Okay.
And I actually applaud it.
Okay, plot twist.
Wow, that's amazing. Because I was going to say my big story today is that absolutely no one wants to repeal the Second Amendment. So I'm not exactly sure.
Wait until you hear they connect.
Oh,
Ooh, this is getting tense.
Yes.
All right, Pat.
It could be a fifth fight.
Hypocrisy and consistency.
Okay.
You're all wrong. It was FOSTA.
What?
It was what?
FOSTA, the FOSTA Act, Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act.
Oh, okay, FOSTA.
The FOSTA Act.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I
Fosta.
can't wait to talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, Glenn.
Yes. So I actually applaud Stevens for coming out and saying, let's repeal the Second Amendment. He's maybe because he didn't write it because he's 98 and probably doesn't, know where his teeth are right now. But he came out and said something honest. I don't agree with the Second Amendment. It's an old, dusty thing. I'm not going to go try to take your bullets away. I'm not going to say, let's just start here. Let's have it out. Let's take the Second Amendment out. That's the American way to do it.
Now, do you agree with him?
No.
Okay.
I agree with having that conversation. I agree with him having the right to say that. Good. Now let's actually talk about it. Let's stop this lie that we're not coming after your gun. We're just coming after your bullets. Let's stop that. That's what the kids are all saying. Gotta get rid of all the guns. That's what they really mean. So let's have that conversation because that's a quintessential American argument. We've had it from the beginning and a quintessential way to solve it.
At least he was truthful about wanting to get rid of the guns.
Yes.
Right.
yeah. There's true value in an honest argument, and it's somewhat rare these days.
I'll debate, you're an atheist? Great. Just tell me you're an atheist. Don't dance around it. You want gay marriage? Good. Let's have that conversation. If we would have had the conversation about gay marriage in a constitutional way, we would have gone through a lot less fighting.
I can respect him for that. Yeah, you were being honest about being wrong.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
There's nothing more agonizing than people saying, I'm all about the Second Amendment, but I hate that. So it is refreshing.
It is.
And you're not going to win that argument. When you come out and say, I want to end the Second Amendment, I want to repeal the Second Amendment, you're not going to win. So let's have that discussion by all means.
Even if, you're telling me that nothing could happen in this country that we would repeal. I think Beslan would, if that happened here in America, if anybody remembers Beslan in Russia, where the terrorists came in and they shot how many children? Hundreds?
140 or something.
Yeah, horrible, horrible thing. Yeah. I think you could actually get America to say, you know what, get rid of all guns. I think there could be something. But let's have the honest argument.
Yeah. But Stu says that no one...
There's actually nobody who wants to repeal the Second Amendment. You guys are off base here.
Really?
I can understand maybe you're not as informed on the Chris Cuomo scale as I am. But I listen to a decent amount of Chris Cuomo.
Why?
I'm a masochist.
Is it kind of like you kneeling in front of a cross doing this, like listening to him?
Sort of. Yeah. Chris had a situation where he was on the air with Rick Santorum. And Rick Santorum brought up the fact that people want to come for their guns. They want to repeal the Second Amendment. And Chris said there's absolutely no one trying to do that. There's nobody trying to repeal the Second Amendment. Now, he brought up Santorum, but wait, what about Justice Stevens?
It's kind of a bad day to make that case.
Right, because this just happened. And, again, it wasn't just Stevens in his nursing home blurting it out, while he's on a respirator. This was an op-ed in the New York Times, right? Like, this is a pretty big deal. And then he went back and forth. And there's something that I think Pat and I noticed back in the day with Chris Cuomo. I listened to enough Chris Cuomo, and I preface this, he's actually not the worst host on television. And I think it's easy to think he is, because you catch a lot of him, and every time you see him, he's terrible. But, hearing them on the way in, a lot of times, he actually sometimes will make interesting arguments. He plays devil's advocate on a lot of points. But about once every 2 months, he puts himself in a position where he's taken the absolute wrong side of something. He's completely wrong. and he absolutely can't stop himself from doubling down on it like 50 times.
He doesn't know how to stop.
He doesn't know how to stop. He gets himself in these little corners, and instead of being honest and being like, look, yeah, no, I didn't mean it that way. Here's what I meant. He just doubles down and doubles down and doubles down and doubles down until eventually people get bored of him. This is what's happening with this one. He went on Twitter afterwards to defend his point. He wrote, "This is a lot of bunk. No one is calling for a Second Amendment repeal. Stop with the boogeyman. We need to stop the shootings and have a rational conversation about what can be done." Well, I just went through just a few from the past few months. I mean, here is obviously John Paul Stevens, repeal the Second Amendment in the New York Times.
Yeah, but does he count as a person?
Yeah, he does. He does. Another Stevens, Brett Stevens, repeal the Second Amendment. This is notable. Why? Because he is the conservative columnist at the New York Times, one of them.
Wow.
And then Bari Weiss, who is also one of the conservative, I guess, columnists at the New York Times, who is cheering on Brett Stevens' op-ed and saying, yes, repeal it. Now, you want to talk about, yes, of course, there's always going to be leftists and socialists who say repeal the Second Amendment.
Conservatives.
Well, you have conservatives going in the New York Times. It's three main figures from the New York Times coming out and saying repeal the Second Amendment. It is something to pay attention to. And there's been others. People have now found even more recent examples from professors. And,
well, I mean, how many times? Fool me once, fool me 1,000 times. How many times are we going to fall for this? They're now all talking about single-payer health care, which we said. I remember standing on Fox going, hello, that's what they're going for. And they did the same thing.
Yeah.
They're not doing
Nobody's
that.
talking about
They're
that.
not talking about that. That's crazy. Stop with the boogeyman. Sound
So do you
familiar?
think Chris really meant nobody, or he means like nobody really important?
Yeah.
Because he saw some of those signs out at the march. He had to have seen those.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he did say Stevens, who's he? He's basically an old justice. It's not even, he's not leading an organization. He's not an elected politician. He's an influencer, obviously.
He's only saying that because he doesn't think it could win.
Right.
If he thought it could win, I'm guessing, but I believe he would be saying, yes, we are talking about repealing the Second Amendment.
And again, like, look at, of course, Stevens was one that voted against the Heller decision that, codified that right of personal ownership of firearms. But I mean, ask any of the other liberal court justices. You think Ruth Bader Ginsburg would come out and if she had a chance, would she repeal the Second Amendment? Of course she would.
I have to tell you, Frank Oz has got a nasty job coming his way. If she ever dies, he has got to put his hand inside of her and keep her moving on the Supreme Court. You cannot lose Ruth Bader Ginsburg under a Republican president. You can't.
Well, I mean, obviously we, from a liberal perspective, that's definitely true, right? I mean,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Frank Oz will be like, no, I'm perfectly fine.
On the other side, though, it's one of the reasons why Donald Trump got elected, right? Probably the single largest.
Yes.
We always talk about, hey, what about people in the middle of the country? What about people who've lost their jobs? That's all important. Probably the single biggest reason was we have a bunch of justices that are approximately 300 years old, and they're going to get replaced. And look, if Gorsuch is any sign of what's to come, that would be a positive change as far as the court balance goes.
Can I just say before we move on that that's not really the compliment you want to get? What you said about Chris Cuomo, he's not the worst.
That's as far as I'm willing to go.
He's not the worst, not the compliment you want.
And that is, will you stand by that?
Oh, I'm very shaky.
Yeah,
on it.
okay.
He's definitely bottom five.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that.
There's no question.
You don't know where he is in the very bottom.
Right.
All right, Pat.
Yes.
Your top story.
I'm a little concerned today because they had that women's forum on CNN about whether or not the Stormy Daniels, and they were conservative Christian women here in Dallas that all watched the Stormy Daniels interview.
Oh, wow.
together. And then they talked to him afterwards. Not one of them thought it was a problem.
No.
Not one of them. Not one of them. And first of all, they don't believe it. But secondly, even if it's true, so what? It happened 12 years ago. And I just think we're losing big time if we can't be consistent on this. If we're not going to have any high ground on moral issues, we're not going to have any high ground as Christians and say, no, character matters. Remember? Hello? Did it only matter until 1998?
And why do you think CNN did that? I mean, they
For
just
that
put,
very reason, I
they
think.
knew.
For
they
that very
put
reason.
women on. They
To
all
show
knew.
our hypocrisy.
Yes, they all knew. None of these women are going to have a problem with it.
Yep. And none of them did.
And look, first of all, I think if you go through the reporting of this, it's blatantly obvious the affair happened. We talked about this the other day. We put a percentage
It's
on
almost
it.
for sure.
They're all north of 90%. Right. So that's one thing to price it in is another. But like to say it's 12 years ago, well, some of it was 12 years ago. Some of it was a lot more recent. The
payoffs they
alleged
didn't care about either. That was all on Cohen. None of that was Trump.
No logical person could possibly believe that Michael Cohen is out of the goodness of his own heart taking $130,000 without any discussion. I mean, that's just absurd. You have to be living in a state of denial because you want the other outcome. And look, that's where we are in this country at this point. I'm not surprised about it, but you have to step back and at least say, look, this might be a situation where, because yes, it's in the past. Look, it was 12 years ago, and then it was 7 years ago that the alleged threat happened, and it was just before the election that the alleged payoff happened. Well, the payoff we know went on. But you know what? Right now, today, he's still denying it. Right now, that's happening right now. That part of the story is today. It's not in the past. He's still lying about this affair, unless you believe he really didn't do it, which is difficult.
So but it's just a lie about his personal life. Just to save his marriage,
his God, and his family.
Yeah. So
the exact same thing in 1998. The exact same thing.
But here's my question. We haven't talked about that. Have you guys talked about this on the air a lot?
Yeah.
You have. Mm-hmm. We haven't. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is I don't think it really matters anymore. We're not. That's like arguing about gay marriage. Horses are all out of the barn. So what do you do? Why stand there and still argue? I think we need to reel back from the Donald Trump. This isn't about Donald Trump. It's about us. It's about us.
And that's how we covered it in the morning. We said it's wrong. Mm-hmm. Let's just say it's wrong. On record, Trump was wrong to have done this. And let's be clear what Stormy Daniels is up to. And also her attorney.
Matters.
Characters matters. Ours was basically just stating fact for who we are.
And it's not, we have to get out of the, but you started it, or in her case, but she's a porn star. Yeah, I got it. I know exactly who she is. Right. Mm-hmm. I know it's hard. She has very little credibility in the first place. To say this is a righteous fight.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah. Stop.
And we also just thought it was funny, too, how apparently just sitting on a bed is like, well, I got to have sex with a guy now.
Right. Is that nuts?
When I was younger,
I would have sat on beds all the time.
I'm buying expensive dinners.
Right.
I want to make sure to get to your...
FOSTA, the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act. Wow, this is a powerful, powerful slippery slope we have just stepped on.
This is important.
It really is. I mean, fighting online sex trafficking, a good thing.
Great. Yeah.
Except as part of this act, it says third parties can be held responsible. For example, Craigslist. If somebody goes on Craigslist... Knowingly. But Glenn, that standard's going to be easy.
I will tell you, this has been because I was for this. I've been talking to people on Capitol Hill for a while. I'm a publisher, okay? That means I'm responsible for anything that anybody says online? That's not good. So I know. I'm very well aware of it. I talked to Mike Lee. I talked to everybody I could that really knows this. And the secret here is knowingly, because of what Backpage was doing, they were engaging people and saying, no, don't put that in. Say this instead. Because they knowingly knew that those were code words that sex traffickers would send out to people who wanted to buy children and have sex with children. So they were actually involved in it. Yes, it might be a slippery slope, but it's the best you could do to stop real dirtbags. It's going to take other dirtbags to twist that.
I think that's coming.
It's going to be an interesting split because Rand Paul was against it and Mike Lee was for it.
Yeah.
And usually they're going to be on the same side of about 95% of stuff.
Yeah, because if you don't make that standard where they knowingly, then anybody can be held responsible for anything. Any internet service provider could be provided for this.
It's an absolute impossibility.
If you bludgeon somebody with a banana cream pie that you bought from Pat Gray's Banana Cream Pie and Light Bulb Emporium, Pat's responsible for it? No.
He's responsible for a delicious pie, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they are good.
We got to take a break. We'll be back.
Bright light bulbs, too.
Oh, yeah, really bright.
All right, Robert Mercer's secret adventure as a New Mexico cop. Glenn, stunt double, go.
Yeah, I saw this, and I was really intrigued by it. It was written very Esquire-esque. It was about all the things that Robert Mercer was involved in. In case you don't know Robert Mercer, of the Mercer gazillionaires, funders of Breitbart and a whole bunch of other things. I don't necessarily agree with the Mercers and what they stand for, but this was kind of an interesting story because it goes right towards the Second Amendment, in my opinion. So they were talking about how he was a New Mexico cop, a reserve police officer. And because of this, he was able to buy his way into having a concealed carry license, which covered the entire United States of America. Now, it's interesting because the way they wrote it was like, this is the rich and powerful, corrupt people being able to buy things that they're not supposed to be able to buy. Well, I actually have a lot of experience and inside knowledge in this because this is actually a very common thing. A lot of public figures, a lot of famous people, specifically athletes that don't have the means. Like they live in places like L.A., which you cannot. I mean, it's downright illegal.
Yeah.
New York, exactly the same. I don't even know how they get away with this. But if you apply for a concealed carry license, what they do is they look at it, they read it, they toss it into a drawer, and they can say, "Hey, we did our due diligence, but you'll never get one." So people that actually want to take responsibility for their own safety, they do this type of thing so that they can actually carry. Now, they wouldn't have to do this if they actually followed the Second Amendment to begin with. They wouldn't even have to go through these things. But you'd be like, Shaquille O'Neal is a reserve police officer in Los Angeles, for crying out loud. And it's hilarious, the stories around LA. Every once in a while he'll pop up in a drug bust. And they'll be like, what are you talking, what's Shaquille O'Neal doing here? But I'm scared. But I thought it was interesting. This is a perfect case for national concealed carry. Perfect case for it. If you just had national concealed carry, if you followed the Second Amendment, you wouldn't have to jump through all of these loopholes, having to jump through doing all these other bells and whistles just to protect yourself. Yeah. And that's what this went to the heart of.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get your rights. I mean, imagine if you had to do all these tricks to get your First Amendment rights or your Fifth Amendment rights. Mm-hmm. That's not the way it is anywhere else. And yet, you're right. They treated that. It was an interesting story. It was really lengthy. I thought an interesting thing they said was that Mercer was essentially the most interesting man in the world on the right. And like the guy from the Dos Equis commercials, like he's that guy, and he has all these crazy stories and this really colorful background. This is just one that they highlighted there, but they're really going after him to try to disarm him and make him a kind of a crazy character.
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
Did everyone watch Roseanne?
I did.
Yes, did you?
I did actually, which is odd. I wouldn't consider myself a fan of the show at any point in its run, but I mean, I kind of felt like a little bit of a cultural thing going on, and the ratings showed it. I mean, 18.1 million people watched this show, which is
a lot today.
A lot today. 5.1 rating in the demo, which is like a huge number for these shows these days. I mean, the shows around it had half the numbers. And I guess like it is kind of in that moment. She's a Trump supporter on the show, and her sister is sort of like the hardcore leftist, and they've kind of created that conflict between the two, and that's kind of where it is. We do have a clip, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, let's watch.
Most of all, Lord, thank you for making America great again. Mom, no, it's okay, Darlene. How could you have voted for him, Roseanne? He talked about jobs, Jackie. He said he'd shake things up. I mean, this might come as a complete shock to you, but we almost lost our house the way things are going.
Have you looked at the news? Because now things are worse.
Not on the real news.
So it was a lot of the typical back and forth about Trump and stuff like that. I mean, Glenn pointed out, I thought something that was interesting, which was really capturing that one part of it, which is, people who were on the edge and they decided to do it and pull the trigger, to vote for Donald Trump. Did it?
Got that right.
They kind of got that reasoning, I think, right there. The other part is that she, the sister, reveals that Roseanne made her feel so terrible for voting for Hillary that she decided to vote for Jill Stein. It's kind of, and Roseanne's response was, "Who's Jill Stein?" Which I think is what America's response would be. Well, I got it was an interesting thing. It's an interesting experiment in television as well. I think it's kind of interesting because they're bringing back the show that was beloved for about 3 seasons, right? And it went on for 9. I mean, at the end of that show, no one was worried that it was going to be canceled. It was really kind of a in the middle of nowhere.
This gives hope to all of us who want to see Alf return. I mean, right? I mean, they've been holding out for Alf.
It's been such a long time.
Yeah.
I watched last night, and the more I've had a chance to stew on it, I'm not stew on it, but think about it. I'm curious. I wonder if. So I guess I question if Roseanne really is a Trump supporter or not. I mean, she seems very vocal about it. Yeah. But
seems to be.
But her views in the past and what the show has right. It's like you literally she could easily be a Bernie Sanders supporter and say the same things in this show.
She did an interview and she said that she she thinks that he does agree with what she believes in, and so this is really quickly.
This is the danger of it, because you actually, it could be watering down the GOP. It could be watering down conservatism, even though Trump's not really.
It's already watered down.
Yeah. But still, like pro-transgender on a 7-year-old. You know what I mean? I mean, that's, I guess, what I'm kind of scared about going forward with it.
Speaking of Planned Parenthood, speaking of transgender. We need Disney princesses that are trans.
That are trans, that have had an abortion, that are pro-choice, because we want to take all of our children's childhood away from them.
Yes.
And it's about time to do that.
Right.
I mean, I think these adult themes, abortion, trans, none of these go far enough. I think we need a Disney princess who has her head lopped off by a terrorist. I think we need a Disney princess who goes to Afghanistan and gets blown up in an IED, loses a leg, comes back home with PSD, STDs,
lots of P's
and just is homeless because she can't get a job. And
the chlamydia princess would be kind of an
wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, that would be an interesting.
I'm just going to throw this out there.
Okay.
Sex trafficked princess.
Nice. Nice.
Maybe.
Because let's get our children hip to what's really going on in the world now.
Nothing says empowerment like that.
Right?
That's all about empowerment.
I mean, how ridiculous is this? A Disney princess who's had an abortion. I mean, how does that even work? What's
the storyline? And they deleted the tweet, right?
Damn it, I'm pregnant with Aladdin's child. I will not have this baby.
All right.
This is such a bad time in my life.
We gotta take a break. Stay with us. Have you ever wondered what an assault weapon actually is? Huh? Okay, well, if so, I might have an answer for you.
Banning an assault weapon. Do you know what an assault weapon is?
Yeah, it's assault weapon. It's like I kind of do, but kind of don't.
Okay.
Like
Really don't.
It's just
What is an assault weapon?
Can any of you tell me what an assault weapon is?
I guess. But assault weapons, does that sound safe to you?
Just kidding. We don't have an answer for you because it's a completely made-up term.
It's like pornography. I know it when I see it. Right? That's the great pornography scale.
But isn't that, it kills me that they are able to just make up this term and use it, and they don't even know what it means.
Oh, that's it. And this is what goes back to one of our original conversations today. They don't care what it means.
Yeah.
They're not trying to differentiate between two types of weapons. They want none of the weapons.
Yeah. Really quickly, I do want to get to one tweet. Someone wants to know why Stu looks like Bob's big boy. It's kind of weird, right? You can see the resemblance.
Even in this gender fluid world, I am a
see you guys
boy
tomorrow.
and I'm big.
Bye.